Defamation. In this PowerPoint presentation, we will be discussing the New York Times versus L.B. Sullivan and Gertz versus Welch. These two are important because they both involve communication outlets. As PR professionals, we must pay attention to this type of defamation because it could damage somebody's reputation. Why are these cases historic and relevant? Well, one of the cases, the New York Times had published an article that stated an exaggeration of the actual events, which ended up damaging somebody else's reputation. And on the Gertz versus Welch, I think this is more of a tabloid issue because it was in a paper called The American Opinion. So it's not as relevant, I would say, as the New York Times, but it's still something that should be taken into account. Mass communications and defamation. It is important that we understand the reason behind these lawsuits. We as communicators have the greater responsibility to understand and fact check absolutely everything. Every single word could lead to disaster. Without even going too far, we understand that any media outlet, even if it's social media outlet, could be devastating in today's day and age. Something as simple as just tweeting something could wreak havoc in somebody's life. Lester B. Sullivan versus the New York Times. Now, how did Lester B. Sullivan start a lawsuit against the New York Times when his name wasn't even mentioned in the article? Here are the facts. The article was stating a certain number of arrests on Martin Luther King. Now, this was presented with exaggeration. I am assuming that this was done to increase news relevancy. The reasons behind it are not mentioned in the case. Now, the number of arrests was stated to be 6 as opposed to 4. And the issue here is that Lester B. Sullivan was overseeing one of those teams. As a police officer, he was in charge of several police departments. Understanding his position in the public sector and understanding his role immediately made the public assume that he was behind the arrests. Now, this was, of course, damaging to his reputation greatly because he was holding a position. He was, in fact, not a public figure in the sense of a celebrity, but still a public figure because he's a public, the equivalent to a low-level elected official. So this case gains relevancy because of how his reputation could have been damaged, especially in the South. He had to prove that that was a lie, and he also had to prove that there was some kind of damage to his reputation. Now, let's look at the court's decision. The court's decision was ruled 9-0 in favor of Sullivan. He was awarded $500,000 in reparation for the damage, and eventually the press, the New York Times, of course, had to retract their remarks. Of course, this was under pressure of the governor, but people like him, who already has a career level position, could take a significant toll on his career. Just imagine if he had gone without this being clarified. Imagine if he had gone to after being in the police department, he would have gone into politics. This could have been devastating for his image, and clearing his name is as important as clearing his image with the police department. Gertz versus Welch. Now this is a very interesting case because Elmer Gertz was a lawyer representing a family. In this case, there was a police officer, Richard Nuccio, who had shot Ronald Nelson. He was a youth in that area. And Gertz was representing Nelson's family. He was accused, the police officer was accused. The police officer was accused of second-degree murder. And the American Opinion had published an article of Gertz having a communist agenda. Now, we're talking about times when being a communist was a sin. There was a lot of things going on around the world in terms of political turmoil in other countries, and reminds me of a case of a Guatemalan president that was accused of communism, and he was ousted completely, almost immediately. A Democratic elected president that was ousted for being a communist. And he wasn't really a communist. It was just evidence that he was a communist. But you could imagine somebody like Gertz being in this position and in a country where everything is supposed to be against communism, and then the public opinion comes up with this secret agenda of communism behind under his sleeve. So they published an article with luxury of details about the secret conspiracy to frame police officers in an effort to eventually replace them all and engage in dictatorship and nepotistic activities. What was the court's decision? The court ruled in favor of Mr. Welch, awarding him with $50,000 in damages to his reputation. Communications and news relevancy. In this information era, we cannot afford to make one single mistake in how we communicate. We must be careful and we must be responsible with the information that we put out there. We see some cases of tweets that have gone viral and have damaged people's reputation greatly. Now, we've seen celebrities every day, especially the case of some rappers that are just going at it and just accusing each other of things and engaging in libelous practices. And, it's the entertainment business. It's a never-ending game. And the same with the tabloids. They're always putting out stories that aren't true to gain news relevancy. And I think we covered this earlier in the course when we talked about the reason why these celebrities don't go after them. Because they would be giving more credit to these guys. They would be giving more credit to the publishers. These are my references. And thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed my presentation.